no worries. I just wanted to let you know my situation and how I had very little ability to troubleshoot.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
So we're live.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Welcome to the Porthole to Justice.
Hey, Amelia, how are you?
I'm good. And thank you so much for coming on. I did several introduction shows prior to this, and I was sharing about web investigations. And you've done some really extensive connecting the dots type of work. And I'd love it if you'd share some of that with us.
Sure. So today I'm I'm in the process of filing a lawsuit against what is aspiring in Congress. So it's a ringleader by the name of Imran Awan, who's working kind of on behalf of Debbie Wasserman Schultz to, it looks like, dope phones as well as laptops in Congress for the equipment that Congress gets, as well as maybe other people that are involved in the defense community. Maybe people that are involved in large military bid situations in the Defense Logistics Agency here in Virginia. And so we're working with a lot of data sources that have not come public yet. We're trying to discover those data sources through this lawsuit. It's a civil lawsuit. I've tried to intervene in the criminal case where the prosecution wasn't pursuing these crimes, but we've kind of shifted over to a civil lawsuit that we'll be filing here soon, probably this week, in the District of D.C., downtown Washington, D.C.
Wow. So you're kind of like, what do you, okay, I have like a couple of questions I have a lot of questions I want to ask.
Sure.
And I didn't know about the lawsuit, so.
Okay. It's always good to give your listeners the latest and greatest, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You're breaking the story. You're breaking the story.
Yeah, I didn't know about the lawsuit, and I'd love it if you keep me posted on that for sure. So I guess what I wanted to ask you about was the Chicago political police organ trafficking, all of that sort of, I think you've done like 200 stories on Jasmine Holland or Shaka Shakur?
No. I recognize those names, I think, as rappers. I think is that the station there? I'm sorry, I'm in a lift. I think I think I recognize those people as rappers, but that I've never done any shows on them. I think Shakur is probably Tupac. Is that Tupac?
Yeah.
And then, but no, I've never done a show on that. What I have done is I have looked at the history of the CIA and a company that they tend to work through as an agent called DynCorp, DYNCORP, and there's always kind of that CIA wink to their names, DynCorp, like we kill people for fun or profit.
Mm-hmm.
So DynCorp is the company that has had this really poor record. DynCorp's had this really poor record of when a conflict situation occurs in the United Nations, they come in as a peacekeeping force and they train the peacekeepers, and a part of that is taking kind of the spoils of war. So they start this human trafficking. They in Kosovo, going back there, that's where they started this practice of, these are prisoners, these are bad people, let's not let their organs go to waste when we kill them. And that's where this organ harvesting started. Is it a child bride? Is a 15-year-old a child bride when they're sold off to an oil sheik or a local dignitary, or is that child trafficking? Is that human trafficking? Mm-hmm. So the problem when you have that kind of bad root, thank you so much, goodbye to my Lyft driver. The problem when you have that kind of bad seed being planted all around the world around these peacekeeping efforts by the United Nations is they tend to want to do the same thing in every country. They don't like to have a manual that says, oh, we can do this in Congo, but we can't do that in Rwanda, and we can do this in Kosovo, and we can't do that. They'd like to tend to standardize their operations. And you get into a real problem when you start bringing that into democracies like Europe. Mm-hmm. And then you start bringing that into democracies in North America like Canada, Mexico, and Haiti. And then you're especially troubled when you say, well, a couple of spots in America wouldn't hurt. You know, we could do a couple of spots, and Chicago just happens to be the kind of the test market. So if these prisoners are going to die anyway, they're really, really bad people, their organs are going to go to waste. Mm-hmm. So is it really organ harvesting, or is it them just being good stewards of dead bodies? You know, there's arguments. You know, it isn't just black and white. I'm not saying people are being killed for their, you know, organ harvesting. What I am saying is there are people who actually think they're really doing a great service by anticipating the death of prisoners in Holman Square prison, which is a dark prison. It's a secret prison. It's very much like a torture center that the CIA would have built secret prisons all around the world. They typically do this through DynCorp or some third party. Mm-hmm. And then they psychologically torture these people, psychologically operations, sometimes physically torture them to where the person wants to commit suicide. And
yeah,
well,
we see,
you have a body now and you have organs. So that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, and that's where we see the targeting, you know, going on, I think. When it starts, you know, it's becoming more and more prevalent, George, like where people are noticing it in their own communities. They're noticing the tactics now. They're becoming aware. And
well, I think the couple of key reasons, what you're talking about is called low-intensity operations or low-intensity conflict. People can Google low-intensity conflict if they want to see. But the idea is soft war. You don't have let's say, the congressional approval or the international approval for hot war. So that shouldn't stop you from still getting what you want from the country. So you declare this soft war or low-intensity conflict. Mm-hmm. What it does basically is you infiltrate all the government, all the people in the government, especially prisons and any type of law enforcement. You infiltrate, like we have done here in the United States with the JTTF. And these are people that look like police officers. They act like police officers. They have guns. They have badges, but they're the nighttime police officers that really never go into the office. They never report. They don't know anybody else. They never are trained in the things that you think normal police procedure would train in. They're a secret prowler team. They're a night force, kind of a prowler team. And these are the people that do harassment. And this has been around. My dad was in World War II. The Japanese had harassment troops that would come in every night. This has been a part of psychological operations and warfare for a long, long time. The problem comes when you privatize. When you start privatizing independent security companies of, let's say, 20 to 25 people. A lot of times they're extended families, 2 or 3 extended families with all the people in the family. And you make this a company for security, and DHS hires this security company. Now you have people who are not sworn actors. They have the incentive, like private prisons, they have the incentive to privatize surveillance. They have the incentive to privatize harassment, right? So these private security firms are the problem. Sorry, there's Canadian geese flying over me. Must be getting cold for the winter. And Dana Priest from the Washington Post, she won a Pulitzer Prize for the incredible work she did on the series called Top Secret America. Top Secret America, she said there's 2,000 of these private firms. Well, and she pointed out this is not necessarily, this is kind of like a private secret police. They're not sworn, there's no oversight, there's very little reporting on JTTF teams. They work through these fusion centers, so they're given all this information about their targets, but there's no accountability. They use this PRISM system everybody's familiar with from the Snowden thing.
And you know, it's kind of like I usually cover CPS corruption and the pedogate aspect within CPS, but I liken it to the similar to like social workers. They're very compartmentalized. They get all this information and they think that they're doing a good service to the communities. Oftentimes, the children that really need the services are being neglected and left to die, and then the good parents are being targeted. And we see this very often, and it sounds similar to the way these secret police operate as well.
Yeah, I mean, DynCorp teaches this surveillance, so you can go to their book and you can see their training manual. It's just basically the Army PsyOps manual that I think you put on your website. General, what's his name, Reamer, Riemer, the PsyOps manual, 2007. Yeah. It's basically DynCorp just remarkets that. They tear the top sheet off and they put their logo sheet on the front of it. But it's the same idea. Idea being that these are political targets. These aren't targets for people who've committed crimes. I want to be very careful about that. They're usually journalists. You start with journalists first. Mm-hmm. People who are not, don't agree with you, like for whatever side of the political spectrum. And then you slowly just use these different groups to introduce havoc in their life. It's called disruption. Some people call it the program. Some people call it decomposition. They called it in Germany, they called it decomposition. But it's basically soft war. You can, opiate targeting is, get the person on drugs, get the person to use, lure them into
try to get them basically to kill themselves. There's street theater. There's many different tactics. You had even mentioned to me that there's actually like a Pokemon game.
Well, what I'm saying is you could write applications for the best things in the world. I could put out DHS and say, I want to write an application called Amber Alert. Amber Alert's going to be great. It's going to send a message to all these law enforcement. We're going to look at suspicious persons. We're going to send yellow alerts. We're going to send orange alerts. It's going to be great. And the people writing that application think, hey, this is really a great idea. And this is exactly what happened, by the way. DHS did commission, and they did write Amber Alert. But now all I need to do, if I'm a bad actor and I want to target a group, is just change the list that gets my texts. Mm. So you go into an area, let's say you're a targeted individual, you go into an area, I send out a yellow alert. Now, yellow isn't going to be seen at the same level as amber, but it's going to be seen by certain groups. And now you are looked at as a suspicious person. They do not ever see, oh, this is Amelia Durand. She's a wonderful person. She's a radio host. She's got 500 different journalists on her network, all these concerned citizens groups. No, they see Amelia, and then they put whatever your top line PRISM description is, which is known subversive, known child trafficker. Well, it poisons the well with these private groups. These private groups get paid based on intersecting with you, crossing your path, basically. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea in low intensity is to cross a person's path, get in their way, create noises, constantly bother them so they can't sleep. They never have a moment of peace. They're always having trash thrown in front of them, or noises, or being treated shabbily in a restaurant, etc. That's the idea. Mm-hmm. And these folks, they don't know anything about you. All they know is they're getting paid a really good wage from DHS. And if I write an application, let's say like Pokemon, or whatever, that, you go get the Pokemon, and you get points, why couldn't I use that same application, that same code for harassment? Instead of being all happy, oh, I got the Pokemon, you basically drop a piece of trash in front of the person, or swear, or yell, or do something to accost the senses of the target.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know about the Amber Alert, they don't put out Amber Alerts for civilians. So if you have a civilian child that's gone missing, they don't put out an Amber Alert. Amber Alerts are only for children that go missing within state custody. So let's say, for instance, you have a child that's been taken by CPS. and you as a parent goes and tries to take that child back from the foster parent or from the CPS office, if you will, they will put out an Amber Alert.
I didn't know that. Yeah, that's terrible. Well, we only what the DOD puts out and what CIA puts out, or JTTF is basically the CIA in the United States, which is an infiltration in kind of into the FBI. We don't know about yellow. We're not trained in yellow, right? Mm-hmm. We don't know about red or what red means either. But there are those other two colors too. It scares me to think what red means, but I think that we've got a situation where all your information is collected on you. It's kept by a pretty extreme group of a pretty extreme sect in Utah through Booz Allen, this FLDS church, which has nothing whatsoever to do with the LDS church, other than they recruit targets out of LDS church.
Yeah, they target you out of the Mormon church.
That's where everybody gets confused, because it's the FLDS, which is the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, and they are targeting actually people in the LDS church with normal Mormons, basically. It's really this is the Evan McMullen wing of the CIA, where it's literally pull wings off flies to see when the fly dies, and just this morbid fascination the CIA has with death constantly. New diseases, new viruses, new cancers, always just thinking these things up so they can think up a cure, and we're going to make money, we'll release this virus, and so, all that kind of just totally macabre, sick mind. This is why Kennedy said, and Arthur Schlesinger, who researched it for him, said the CIA is sick, and that's why Kennedy wanted to break into 1,000 pieces. Well, that was 50 years ago. The last person to challenge the CIA was John F. Kennedy 52 years ago, or 55 now. So all we've done since then is improve the systems for collecting information about the targets, and also improving the targeting system. Right? We can intercept your emails and mess those up. We can intercept you physically, mess up your relationship. We can mess up your house. We can mess up your car. We can mess up your job situation. All very subtle, all very, very subtly. But over time, it degrades the person or decomposes the person. And like I say, you're always offering drugs. You're always offering prostitution. You're always offering some kind of thing that's morally reprehensible, or at least looked down on by the FLDS. Mm-hmm. The FLDS teams then come in and go, well, this person deserves to die. And the person I'm, beholden to is God, not, the laws of the land. And that's exactly how the system works. On the East Coast here, it's the Brotherhood. Now there's 7,000 of these things. So not just FLDS, it's not just the Brotherhood here, it's hundreds of groups. But this whole idea is what I call gangs for security. Somehow thinking that if you have a gang that rules a neighborhood and you have control of that gang, somehow that creates order, right? This is kind of sick, because it's like, okay, well, anybody acts up, we'll use this gang through us, through DHS, we'll use this gang to get them, and that's really what we've got. And we really need to Trump just needs to unplug the private security firms, immediately stop paying any private security firm, and then 99% of this problem will go away, because you're paying people to target, you're paying people to harass, you're paying people for when people commit suicide.
Yeah.
You're paying people when they die of overdoses, for opiate overdoses. Mm-hmm. That's the wrong set of incentives. It's just like the Bush days when they were paying to put people, in private prisons. And they've really worked. DHS has really worked on this private prison thing, where they're just like, we want them to stay in the prison. We want them to commit suicide.
And they're recruiting straight out of Child Protective Services. That it's a pipeline straight to the prison. Once these kids are in the prison system, 70% of human trafficking, 70 to 80% of human trafficking victims come out of Child Protective Services.
Well, it's a natural. You've got somebody who's emotionally abused. They're young. They're impressionable. They're looking at a long stretch of prison time. They feel like they're cut off from the whole world. That's the perfect person to target if you need an operative. And they give you a choice: be an operative or be a victim. You have a choice. Mm-hmm. So that's an unfortunate situation. I try to stay away from the kids too much because it's just such an emotional topic that it's hard to. I try to focus on more the adult victims, or targets, but
well, these I interview a lot of these kids that come out of the foster system on my show, and I got to tell you, they are the most targeted people. Probably they are like more targeted, I think, than regular TIs are, because they are coming out of that system. Well, it's almost like concentration camp to concentration camp. You can't see the bars.
The child is a tremendous profit center, especially when you start bringing fentanyl in the case of, especially aerosol fentanyl. Now, fentanyl has been aerosol, I think, for 45, 50 years. The whole idea was, okay, you got these Russian agents, they're doing bad stuff. We want to be able to spray the room and be able to go in and see what they're doing in their private papers and later their laptops and so forth. So they perfected this thing where you still are breathing, but you're dead to the world. Unconscious. You're slightly cooperative. Well, it turned out to be the best drug ever, because the person is compliant but doesn't remember anything with this fentanyl, this aerosol fentanyl. So when I have a party, the kid just thinks he's in the hot tub, right? Kid never realizes he fell asleep, and he never realizes he was raped. And if I have 10 people at the party, I 10x my profits, for that evening. And people don't think this happens. This is a whole underworld. It reminds me of that movie with Kate, what's her name? Underworld,
Oh, with Kate, it's not Kate, I know who you're talking about. It's not Kate Winslet,
but it's the other one. It's the other.
Not Kate Blanchett, but it's she's a European actress. I can't think of her last name.
Yeah, she's the English actress. Yeah. But anyway, but there's this whole underground world that happens when the lights go out from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. or maybe 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. That's when everything happens. That's when the drugs move. That's when it's almost like, those nocturnal worlds, that they would have on Wild Kingdom, and they would show that when low light cameras were first invented.
And I always, like for me, I always think, well, all of these people think they're being abducted by aliens,
Well, you would have to, the human mind wants an explanation. Why does it feel like I've been raped by a lacrosse team when I get up in the morning? Why am I so completely tired and all my body is, feels like I've been through a beating? Why is that? And you want to figure it out. You want
answers. You want to search for answers.
Yeah. So this is why don't send your kids away on the weekend. Don't send them. I know how it sounds, but don't go to parties. Don't stay late at parties. Go home. Be the one that goes home early. Don't stay over. Don't drink too much where you have to stay over. Trust me, fentanyl has been around for 45 years. A guy named Frank Olson developed it.
What is fentanyl like? Is that like a byproduct of like devil's breath? Well,
I don't know what devil's breath is, but if you look at the history of opium and kind of the CIA's trade in it, and before that it was the British Empire. The British Empire built their whole empire on opium. It's just not taught in the schools, but you can sell a tea chest for $1 or buy it for $1 in India and sell it for $5 in China. Okay, that's pretty good profit. George Bush said that's amazing how much money you can make on 4% up markup, so that shows you his math skills. But you don't have to be a math whiz. You buy the tea chest for $1 in India, sell it for $5 in China, in Hong Kong or Singapore. And the refining opium has been where the concentration has been to increase the profit. And the more you got the one tea chest, you can either do opium leaves or scrapings, or you can do refined morphine, which is the first reduction, or you can go to heroin, which is the second reduction, or you can go to fentanyl, which is the third reduction. Some of these more, esoteric, highly powerful versions. and the value goes up. So in that same T-chest, or same volume of shipping volume, your value just rockets. And the problem with that is it's so much more volatile. If you make a mistake, if your cutter makes a mistake, people die. And we've seen that. We've seen a 500%, 540% increase in opium deaths over 3 years. The New York Times came out with a piece this summer in June of 2017, and they said, we're off the charts for 2017. The early numbers are in for 2017. It blows away the 500% increase. So we're literally on a vertical line right now. If you see the line, it's almost vertical. Because
it's becoming, for me, I mean, I've lived a very kind of unique kind of shut-in lifestyle where, I do a lot of my art and my work, and I work from home. And, I live very, I have a very, I don't tell people when I'm going, really. Yeah. And, or if I tell them afterwards, after I've already gone, but to hear that this is happening, more and more prevalently to more and more people, and it occurred to me that, wow, the human trafficking is really escalating. I mean, locally into local communities. And, I'm data mining and I'm profiling these cases, and it's not civilians that are committing these crimes.
Oh, it's all degenerated. I mean, they think of this as security. But let me ask you, if you go to your local DHS grant, they give these block grants. It's not only militarized with all these, big vehicles, these 20-ton vehicles, and all these bulletproof vests and armor-piercing bullets and M16s, but it's also night vision goggles. It's also these lightweight, breathable gas masks. It's also fentanyl grenades. It's also, and they're training youth. They mainly go after training youth. So these cadet programs are what they use typically. And they want to get these kids committing crimes early, before your brain kind of has this kind of prefrontal cortex to be able to make, moral decisions. Mm-hmm. They want the boys, especially, they want the boys that are about 15, because they'll do anything that, if the sergeant tells them something, mm-hmm. enough, blanks out for Harambe, they'll pull their blank out for Harambe. They don't argue, especially if it's kind of an alpha male yelling at them. They'll pull their blank out for Harambe, and they'll rape the girl. And the teams typically are 3. Sometimes you have 6, mm-hmm. but typically 3. There's 2 that are kind of in training always. There's 1 kind of handler that's kind of like a trustee. Usually teams of 3 and a Harambe, and this is happening right now in America. People think covert action doesn't happen. It does, and you have to practice. You have to practice. Otherwise, when the day comes when there's an insurrection, nobody knows what to do.
But this is a reality. This is a culture that's sort of the undercurrent underneath the Disneyland sort of facade, if you will.
I don't know how to. I mean, I know it seems far-fetched, but if you just look at it and say, go to your local cadet training camp or whatever, little police training camp in the summer, and look at what they have. Mm-hmm. They have Narcan. Narcan is an antidote to fentanyl. Now they're going to say that's for quick treatment of victims who've overdosed. Well, mm-hmm. Okay, that's a good cover, because they're not under fentanyl when they go into a place. This was all developed in the 70s. The British intelligence, the MI6, used it quite a bit in Ireland. A lot of it was used in Israel, which I'm more familiar with. And you have a little device that you can put under the door to deposit late at night, or you have a bit of an ability to intercept the fan and the air conditioner, the blower, and the heater. There's a whole bunch of different delivery mechanisms to, sedate everyone in the house. There's Port and Down experiments in London did this in the 50s. Whole communities where you could spray a whole community, and then you go more localized, and you drive by with cars that do a little.
Yeah, I remember that story. There was one incident where they sprayed LSD on a whole community, and they thought it was the bread or something.
Yeah, that was in France. That was in southern France. And there was actually the one community that I think resisted CIA kind of intrusion into an area. And yeah, it was not the bread.
I mean, you have to realize that it's sort of the coincidences of everything that's occurring. You have to look at what occurred in France, with the Jacobins, and I think it was Robespierre during that whole thing, and then we see these fires in Los Angeles, and we have more and more frequent trafficking going on. I mean, I personally, can see the similarities of some of these crimes that are occurring currently right now.
Well, I don't want to come off as a conspiracy theorist, because the New York Times called me that, and CNN called me that, and Washington Post called me that. So all your listeners have to keep this quiet, because I'm a normal journalist by day, and I just have this conversation every once in a while when people want to know about the more serious covert activities. So don't tell anybody at major newspapers about this conversation. But
you're on live radio.
Yeah, I know, but just keep it quiet amongst your 1 million followers, okay? But if people do want to know about covert activities, prowler teams, the Secret Service had a prowler team program, red teams, CIA has had red teams. If you think about it, you have to develop these programs for certain countries where we don't have clearance, to have a hot war. We need the subtle war. We need to go in, we need to put all the drug dealers to sleep. We need to take all their weapons from them and then arrest them when they wake up, right? I get that. I understand the DEA use of this and so forth. The problem comes when those guys retire and then they get recruited into these private corporations. That's when the problem comes in. When you have a prowler team on your local police department that really aren't police, that they're criminals that have been given.
They're secret police and secret.
Yeah, yes, exactly. They're an extension of the CIA in the United States, and that's the problem. They look like police. They sound like police. They have badges. They have guns, but they're not police. Mm-hmm. And they're running around setting up these parties, the sex parties. I worked for Long Island serial killer.
The courts are totally complicit with this, all of this.
Well, it's tough for a judge. Here comes forward. There's usually one good guy or one front man for every prowler team, and he looks great, and he's got all the credentials, and he sometimes doesn't even know what the team is doing inside. He's the guy who gets to sit in the car. Mm-hmm. And he goes in front of the judge, and he looks great, and he's honest, and he talks straight to the jury, looks him straight in the eye, because he doesn't know what's going on inside. And the guys on the team don't tell him. They're smart enough to know that. You always have one, really great looking guy that just looks like everyone. And then
you have these attorneys. These attorneys, you can pay them like $5,000, and they'll put you on the targeted list, and they'll evict you from your house. They'll get you they'll get you trumped up on some phony fake charges, just all kinds of stuff. And
local communities that need money, you go to those police forces and you say, hey, I got a great way to make money, right? It's like, have all these traps for drunk driving, have all these, go ahead and advertise all the beer specials you want. Matter of fact, half the time, they're friends of the people who are on the police force, right? Because we want kids drunk, and get them started. And I personally witnessed this in Zanesville, Ohio, mm-hmm. where these kids were getting put away. And, the FBI, by the way, I was working a case saying, speaking of uranium that's in the news now, I said that there's an illegal uranium trade being orchestrated by the FBI. At that time, in June 15th of this year, everyone said, he's a conspiracy theorist. Well, the disclosures the last couple of days, I think, has dispelled that myth, that Mueller and McCabe have been doing this for quite some time. And we'll see how that all turns out.
But anyway, they like to throw around this word. Let's just tackle this subject. Let me interject just a second. Sure. They like to throw around this word conspiracy theorist. And I myself, I do something sort of similar to what you do, but I do it in more of my job, what I try to perceive myself as is dumbing it down into like small memes. So I'm data mining these cases, right? And after a while, it builds up and it paints a bigger picture. That's not conspiracy theorist. And I just want to say this for my listeners out there. George Webb does something very similar to what I do, except on on another spectrum. And he does an absolutely thorough job. I mean, I was blown away, to be honest. I'm like, this is incredible. I mean, you get, this guy's like a genius. And
you'd be surprised how smart people think you are when you repeat what smart people say, which is what I do. I repeat what my contributors say, and I take the best, and I do that 5 times a day, and you'd be surprised how smart you sound after you repeat smart people. That's all I can say. But what you're saying is very true. But it's not so transactional. The only thing I'd say it's different. You don't pay the attorney $5,000 to get on the crap list. What you do is you have a tips line in your local neighborhood, and you have a neighborhood watch, and you start saying, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. They need to create this parallel.
And these are like community watch, what the layman would refer to as like a community watch, or for us, it's like it's called a fusion center, and there's one in every city, every county.
Well, the fusion centers are in every state, usually every state capital in every large city. So there's about 100 or 85, I think, something like that. But each neighborhood has their own neighborhood watch. And what you do is you call 1-800-TIPS, and you say, so-and-so suspicious. He's putting up a radio antenna in his backyard. He looks suspicious to me. Now the police have probable cause. So see how it's kind of a dodge of our Constitution, right? So now I can add to that file. Once I get you on that file, I have to have somebody else get you on the file. If you're on the target list, somebody else still has to put you on there. Now I can have somebody else come in and say, oh, by the way, he put 3 wires on the antenna, and he looks like he's transmitting, secrets or something, and it accretes. It accretes so that you constantly build up this file. Well, you have other people looking at your communications. Is he, talking? Is he lonely? Did he just lose his girlfriend? Let's offer him sex. Is he, let's offer him drugs. Let's, introduce these people. Intercept.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are people who, I mean,
I get it all the time. Yeah. I get like, I'll have these guys walk on the scene, and this is why I've stayed single for 6 years. To be honest with you, I'm talking to you a little bit personal right now, because it's the same script over and over again.
Yeah,
and
it's clever in the sense it's compartmentalized. But I would be interested in hearing the script. Go ahead. I'm sure your listeners want to hear it too.
Oh, it's always, it's just like you say, they watch your emails, they see who you're talking to. And usually if I date, or if I even get into a relationship, immediately I get cheated on, or they're intercepted by, whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's always the same script, and it's been that way all my life. And so I just learned, look, I don't want to keep living this script. It's really awful and painful.
Well, I mean, you can imagine how easy this is, right? You have a person who's, let's say, been arrested for drugs, and they're looking at 5 years because they were selling. Now I say, look, if you work with me as an informant, and they call this deferred prosecution agreements, or DPAs. If you work with me as an informant, when it comes time around for your sentencing, I'll consider that. Okay? Well, what does that mean? Well, you're gonna play a role. It's called role players. You're gonna be a role player, and they have surveillance role players and different role players. So here's the role. We're gonna teach you. We're gonna go to a course over the weekend. You're gonna be a role player. You're gonna be the honeypot role player, and your job is to go home with this guy, okay? We know that Amelia is dating this guy. Now, they're not going to tell her this. They're just going to say, there's the target. They point with their elbow. They do some kind of thing. There's the guy. Make sure that, when she goes to the bathroom, you get in there, give her your phone number, right? It could be just that simple, or it could be the hard close, go home with them tonight. But, that happens. And what's happening to you when you're constantly being cheated on is that people, they're watching this and, hey, okay, we need to break this up. It's constantly trying to diffuse. The key is anytime anybody is in a comfort zone, you want to get them uncomfortable. So if they're happy in a relationship, break up that relationship. If they've got a wife, break that up. If they got a job, break that up. If they got a nice car, break that up. Slowly, not all at once. Have little things go wrong with it, so they finally are bicycling and break the bike and have
and then
walking.
the other thing is old scripts. Like something I did in my 20s, like really stupid. I can never live it down.
Yeah. Well, how would that come up? I mean, just people bringing it up to you,
they like random people will just know something I did as a kid, just to creep you out. They want to get you to react.
Yeah. Well, that's all psychological operations. Is you want to create an environment where everybody is against me, and create this paranoia. They want to get you to a doctor. Key thing they want to do is get a schizophrenia diagnosis, and they want to get you on the drugs. That way, when you do commit suicide, when they do get the target to commit suicide, it's like, well, they were mentally ill, they were having mental troubles, and they were off their medication. That's the classic. They were off their medication. Well, we've heard that one before. It's a meme, and you move on. You read in the paper, oh, they're off their medication. I'll tell you, I was in Ohio. I was talking about this secret uranium trade. The FBI came and hunted me down. It says it right. Chris Whitaker, JTTF, hunted me down. Came up with a parallel construction, lured me out of a hotel. I fell asleep in my car. They arrested me for, sleeping in my car. And I had a chance over 2 days to spend it with these kids, going up and getting sentenced for opiate possession. And they were giving them 180 days. Boom, 180 days. One beautiful girl, 20, 21 years old, mother. Mm-hmm. The judge just screaming and yelling at her. No attorney. They didn't tell anybody they had an attorney. You're in a small room with a police officer behind you, video only. And she came out with that look in her eye like she wasn't going to see her baby for another 120 days. And I could tell, she wasn't, I'd seen her, we'd talked. She wasn't a bad mom. She wasn't out there doping up all the time. She just, all she thought about was her baby.
Yeah.
And I had some conversations with her, and I felt just horrible because I said, why couldn't we have a social worker check on her 3 times a day? Just come in the morning, come in the afternoon, come in at dinner time.
That's the thing. That's the thing is they take the kids. They really try to break you down. I mean, at the very least, if they can break you just to where they can recruit you while you're in jail into the human trafficking, that's profit for them. That's at least something. That's value.
Yes.
If they can get you to commit suicide, or they can, orchestrate these elaborate, things, or intercept relationships, or, like, if, for example, I always know, it's like, I'm not psychic. I just know, like, when there's a cute guy coming around and he's being charming and wanting to ingratiate himself into my life, and I always know, it's like, okay, when's the shoe gonna drop?
Yeah. Well, see, you want the men to suicide. You want to keep the hot girls, right?
Yeah, because they can traffic you.
Worth more money. Yeah, they're worth a lot more money than the guys. You want the guy's assets. You want the guy's business. You want the guy's house, etc. You don't want. But you want to keep the girls and keep the kids, especially. Kids are really valuable. It's just like almost farming, really. You shoot the.
Exactly.
And really, to be honest, if you get really down into it, it's not the satanic thing that most people think. It's more the farming attitude.
But it's the mind. It's the mindset it's this, the duality or the satanic nature, I guess, is what people tend to. They feel it. It resonates. When you're in those situations and you're being targeted, and it's all staged, it is satanic.
At the lower levels, it is, yes. At the lower levels, there is some kind of a charge or a rush to know that somebody's pleading for their life and they're going to die, and there is, if you look at the humiliation cycle that they put people through before they kill them, there's no other reason why you would do that other than you get a charge out of somebody pleading for their life, and you have the power
and
take
that's
life.
the other thing too. I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's the other thing too. Like, we see these humiliation rituals all the time with some of the public figures, like Paris Hilton, Kim Kardashian. You know, they have these, Pamela Anderson, they have these videotapes of them having sex exposed. These are humiliation rituals that are happening publicly. But this would happen to a human traffic victim all the time. They would be it would literally be passed around to everyone, and as well as with our actors and actresses. They're you know, they may be at an audition, and that audition is filmed and it gets passed around, the recording. It's a lot more prevalent and really embedded in our culture than I think people really realize or can wrap their heads around.
Yeah, I go back to the Underworld movie, or there's a lot of these movies, you know, where all this stuff happens at 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. Well, if you're asleep, how can you say that it doesn't, right? But why all the need for all the Narcan and night goggles, you know, and all these home invasion technologies? But anyway, I would just say that people keep an open mind. Just ask yourself why the fusion center is there. What information are they collecting? Why does the FLDS Church need every one of your phone calls, need every one of your emails that you've ever written, all your Skype sessions, all your photos you've ever sent to anybody? Why does the FLDS Church and Booz Allen need that? These are not the U.S. government. These are not people sworn to take care of information. They're private contractors. That's what people don't understand. As soon as you introduce that profit motive, people are going to come up with all kinds of reasons why you're evil and need to die. You know, and
if you're Mormon, you have to ask yourself, why do they have to, you know, come to your house every day? Why do they have to check you in at church and make sure that you're present? And it's on that level. Like, it's really on that level. People need to open their eyes. You guys need to wake up. A lot of people, they don't see it, and they're so heavily brainwashed that they just accept it as norm.
I think really, I mean, what I try to do is, and I'm sure parts of this will be replayed at the trial that I'm about ready to do, or the lawsuit I'm about ready to do, which is very different. It's about spying, and it's about intercepting email from Congress and intercepting phone calls from Congress, which is very, very humdrum compared to all the stuff we're talking about. But in a sense, you know, that is where you have to start. You have to start saying, look, you can't collect it all, NSA. You can't collect it all. Every person's phone call. I mean, we kind of had a little bit of a national discussion about that when Snowden disclosures came out, and then everybody said, no, let's renew it. So everybody renewed 702. So this is the thing where we have to go back. You know, Ray of the FBI, the new FBI director, just made a speech in front of the police chiefs in Philadelphia, and he said there's 6,900 phones out there we can't crack because of encryption. That's a real problem. Well, why don't you get a search warrant first? You know, it's called illegal search and seizure, you know, and then you can hire Cellbrite or some Israeli company to crack the phone, which they can do fairly easily. But they just want to fight this encryption. They want to fight anything that would give people a private, you know, the satellite is another thing. I mean, the technology for spraying someone with what they call a tagant, a TAGGANT. You do this in battle all the time. You spray the enemy, then you can see their movements. It used to be just for vehicles. You could see the car tracks and people.
Well, no, now it's programmable matter. It's totally programmable. So let's say, okay, we spray that person and they have these the smart dust that's programmable, or even remote. They can program it remotely. If you look into some of this technology, it's really.
Well, so what you're talking about with the smart dust, most of the stuff is passive. They push the smart dust to make everybody kind of seem conspiratorial, but most of the tags, you know, stay on your shoes, stay on your clothes, stay on your coat, And they want you to wear the same coat every day. They want you to wear the same shoes because this stuff fluoresces, right? This is all, from satellites. These little cubic satellites are only 4 inches by 4 inches. They're little CubeSats, they call them. They burn up in the atmosphere when they fall into the atmosphere, but they can do some nice stuff with these tags. And we've had this technology a long time. So
I drink this stuff. It's a protocol, and it's made from mineral salt. And what it does is it forms mucus around foreign bodies in your body. So once a week, on the weekends, I'll purge. I'll try to purge all this stuff out. And I have done shows on it in the past, but we're being sprayed. It's in our food. I mean, it's just you have to come to the realization that almost everybody's being exposed. I mean,
well, and this is going to sound, this sounds very conspiratorial, but I am totally agreeing with you. Tag ants are old news in military technology and Navy, and the Navy lab here in Anacostia, here in Maryland, develops it, and they can luminesce on different frequencies and all that sort of thing. That's been around for tracking the enemy and the enemy's vehicles and the enemy's combatants for a long, long time. Most of it's passive. There is some smart rocks that they have, they put around train trestles or train tracks and stuff that have little transmitters that can communicate up to the next rock, that kind of thing. Passive, active transmitter technology, but I think it's more at the rock level right now. I don't think it's at the little tiny microchip level, but it might be. I don't work at the Navy lab.
Well, and then they have this programmable matter that's called black goo. And a lot of your mainstream tattoo shops are using this ink with this programmable matter.
I like that. That's
and
smart.
It can be programmed remotely. So let's say, and see, the people get addicted to getting tattoos because they get actual initial high from the tattoo, which is programmed into the ink.
Yeah. Well, originally, tattooing goes back to Egypt, right, for keeping track of your slaves, right?
Yeah.
So it's the whole promotion of all the tattoo parlors and everything was just genius. Whoever came up with that, it's just genius because it's just the greatest, non-invasive identifier you could ever come up with.
I know, now, and it's not like, people.
It's genius. To influence a whole population and get them to do that on their own and pay money and wait in line.
Yeah.
And have to fill out a whole rule sheet about not drinking anything before. It's genius. It really
is. And now they can program it remotely. That's people really need to wrap their heads around that. You can program.
Now, sometimes they'll put out disinformation just so it sounds conspiratorial. Now, I do know that there's a program that Temporal Data Systems uses, and this guy named Burrell, ex-FBI guy. Mm-hmm. And what they try to do is put stuff that would be in an RFID chip, like in an expensive Yankees hat or something. Let's say it's got an RFID chip in it. Mm-hmm. That basically is a passive device, but if I energize it, this is how Walmart knows that somebody's stealing something, right? Mm-hmm. It sends out a little signal and can be detected when you walk out of Walmart. So that technology exists, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that same technology, if it's a RFID chip in your Yankees hat, and this is the whole other thing about, high-end sportswear, getting people to wear high-end sportswear, is that you chip that and it can handshake with your phone. So now I have basically a chipped phone. Now, this is what they have in Pakistan, which is, it's a biometric phone. You're required to carry a biometric ID card in Pakistan, and you're required to carry a biometric phone. Mm. Now, if we tried to put that in the United States, we'd have all kinds of ACLU and EFF and right. But it's the same thing. I just need to come up with a program to encourage you to wear it, and I always have biometrics on you. The idea that the NSA just wants to collect it all, but they don't want to know where you are. The NGA doesn't want to know where you are. Mm-hmm. Most people don't even know what the NGA is. We're at the same point where we were with Snowden before Snowden exposed the NSA. The NGA wants to know where you are. Long lat, 7/24, 365. So the idea of you hiding or running away, it's preposterous. Every person is tracked 7/24 NGA, just like NSA tracks everything you do communications wise.
It's not conspiratorial at all. I mean, I've actually had to educate myself in a lot of this stuff just because of who I am, the nature of my own existence.
Yeah. Well, I've actually interviewed some of the people that are in the FBI, and these are very sensitive conversations, that work with the NGA to do this kind of tagging, and it's called I'm going to forget the name of it, so I better not say it, but it's sort of the law enforcement data system, and I can't remember actually what the acronym is right off the bat, but it's developed in Clarksburg, West Virginia. Mm-hmm. And this concept of where are you right now and what's your communications. And then the other thing is you want a whole bunch of analysts always looking at your file, always looking at the tags other people have put on your file, just like Facebook. Matter of fact, some people say Facebook could have come out of the surveillance system, PRISM, right? But if I say Amelia is red-haired, boom, that's a tag. I can search on that tag now, that metadata. If I say she's hot, I can search on that. If I want to, there may be somebody who wants to target hot redheads, right? Mm-hmm. Or, whatever, geographic or any other kind of selector is called. And people got introduced to selectors through the NSA with I think PRISM had 132 different selectors, but you can add selectors all the time. And this is how databases work. They work on metadata, and you make search better. Yeah. And they only get better, and so the file on you only gets more specific about. I
learned about the Mormons because I was advocating for a little girl that was a really, really rough case. I don't want to go into it too much in detail, but I became really involved in the Mormons. I was attending Mormon church. I learned so much. I mean, that was, for me, a very enlightening experience.
Yeah. Well, let me just say it's going to be FLDS, and you're probably not familiar with it, but you'll do the research on it. And
no, I know who you're talking about. And
they have these farms where the girls are raised from the time they're 12, and they're told that the guy who raises them is the president of the United States, and everybody, and the tunnels, for when the cops come around, and the whole schmeal. And we've got one of the top FBI guys who's one of these devotees, which is really sick. And it's just true, it's just true. And
I know that there's FLDS, something called the FLDS. Finders. Do you know what?
Yeah.
Okay. Are they connected to the Mormons?
You have a lot of finder groups. Finder is kind of like a generic term. The FLDS is going to be a finder group for certain states. For other states, you're going to have like a brotherhood. Brotherhoods mainly started around after the Civil War, and literally you were finding runaway slaves. It goes back to even before, but their job, mainly located in West Virginia, was to go find slaves, and they would have to go into Maryland or wherever, New York, act like, but there were teams, that would work, and then they would get the routine, and then they would figure out when they're going to abduct the slave. So this is not new. The Brotherhood's been around a long time. But the other groups are more usually around drug centers. The the CIA wanted to introduce heroin, after World War II. They did it mainly through Hell's Angels, motorcycle gangs. The original refuge was Indian reservations. You get in trouble, run to the Indian reservation. So you had a lot of drug centers and Hell's Angel centers around Indian reservations. Well, guess what? I can do child trafficking around that. I just take the person in the Indian reservation, gone. And a lot of the finding came out of that. And it's just a crime network. I mean, there's just no two ways about it. It's a crime network. And, I mean, we could go into all the different cases of Hell's Angels, but it basically came out of drugs. And from drugs, everything follows from there.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you come up with some
It's so
excuse.
incredible, and I don't know.
It's a crime network.
Yeah.
Crime network, yeah. And it's just like any other mafia or whatever. You start somebody out with a premise of crime, and drugs is the thing that pays for everything. It's so profitable.
Well,
People
it's
think,
like you were saying. It's like you were saying. They don't. You can have a store like selling orchids or flowers or what have you, but it's much more profitable to have a drug dealer, a business and trafficking. Apparently,
I went to this fruit place, and Steve King's going to hate me for this saying this, Congressman Steve King. But I went to this fruit place in Ames, Iowa, and what did they do is they take all fruit coming in from all over the world, and they send it through to spray it, right? And for irradiation and so forth, so they're not bringing in bugs, etc. Well, there's this fruit place that's just the straight, commodity, selling fruit all over the world, vegetables, doing, just great job. Across the street is this place that looks like a fortress. You can't come in, all cameras and everything. I tried to go in there, 3 people cut me off, wanted to find out my name, why was I signing in? And they made this exotic fruit. What they do is they take, they put it in kind of arrange it like flowers, and use fruit as kind of like flowers, and then make these arrangements. Well, to me, that was the perfect drug thing. They're really super expensive arrangements, right? You go to a very select group of people. You know who is a receiver and who isn't a receiver, and you send them the stash in the middle of the whatever and that's how it works. It's food is typically the number one distribution mechanism.
I grew up in I actually grew up in some exclusive sort of in LA, California, some of the nicer suburban areas of LA, if you will. And yeah, I worked in Malibu, and yeah, I seen a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you have the problem with the CIA is they always want, it's kind of like,
but they're watching. They're watching all this stuff going on.
I mean, they just want to kill. They were always testing their slow kill. They're always testing it. Always want to make it slow kill, even more gradual, even longer, even better. And that they're just consumed with this. They're always researching the next best thing to slow kill. That's all they do.
They get the loose. They want to suck the energy off the person.
Well, you think about a car manufacturer. They always want a little bit more gas mileage, a little bit better performance, fast performance, a little bit better handling. That's how the CIA thinks about death. That is how the CIA thinks about death. Yeah. They're completely consumed. They're sick.
Well, it's like now they compromise the immune system right out the gate or out the womb. Sorry.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother. Like they've got it down to a science to where they pretty much know where our lifespan is going to be. Such and such. You're going to die at such and such age. I mean, they have it all down to a science.
Yeah, it depends on if you cross them. You can shorten it. But anyway, speaking of shortening, I probably have to get on this train. I got to go do a story.
No, thank you so much for coming on the show. Oh my gosh, and I'd love to have you back again.
Yeah, that was fun. Okay, Amelia. Remember, all listeners out there, don't tell anybody about my more conspiratorial stuff that happens between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. I'm a mild-mannered reporter during the day. I'm not Batman. Okay, thanks,
George,
Amelia.
you're awesome. You're a superhero. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh my gosh. Wow. He's so cool. I've been talking to him for, I think I started talking to him a few days ago, and it feels good to talk to somebody that just he's just a wealth of information. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. This has been another episode of Porthole to Justice, the Window to the Truth, off the cuff. I am signing off. I'm going to sign out with, let's see. I'll try and sign out with Zeph Daniels' Deeper Down. Let me go back. I gotta try to. I love that song. He's a genius composer, that man. Okay, well, I don't know if I can find it. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in.